All right, y'all, last day of Renaissance Notes. So we are covering both theater and dance together in one day. So starting with theater. So we are starting with something called Commedia dell'arte. So this was improvisational comedy with traveling actors with invented dialogue from bare plot outlines. They used novels, gossip, and current events for subject matter. There was a cast of 12 stock characters with stereotype personalities, 9 men and 3 women, but they were all acted by men. So the goal of this, didn't have to be printed scripts for people to rehearse. They had a bare plot outline, be like, this happens, this happens, this happens. And then based on kind of what the audience was reacting to, the actors could improvise lines to keep going to make the audience laugh. It was a traveling company, so they literally traveled and then just set up stage in different spots and then advertised, and then local people would come. Since they used novels and gossip and current events for the subject matter, everybody was kind of aware of the setting already. And then since they used these stock characters, you're like, oh, if this person shows up in a red hat, I know that he's going to be rich and funny, something like that. They all kind of knew the bare plot outlines and the personality traits of all the actors already. And remember that even the women at this time were played by men. So men acting like women because women were not allowed to be employed. This happened from the 1500s to the 1700s. It started in Italy. A manager led the troupe of actors and wrote the scripts or the bare plot outlines. And there's always 2 types of stock characters, the upper class and then the servant class, with characters each identified by costumes and masks. So you could immediately tell when someone walked down the stage if they were upper class or servant based on the costume and mask they were wearing. The stage was mobile, so the troops could take it with them, tear it down, and then move from town to town with that stage. The plot outlines were posted backstage before each performance, so the actors would kind of know which outline, which plot they're doing. Lazzi, which was the Italian word for joke, was one of the only parts that had memorized lines. So this was a specific humorous line or humorous scene that they had to get into the plot. It's apart from the main action, ignored by characters. So this is kind of where that office mentality, where you a joke happens and then you look into the camera. That is Lazzi. So actors would use this here, so something would happen and then the actor would kind of look away and be like, do you believe this is happening? Similar to when modern TV character, like The Office, looks into the camera. Then we have verisimilitude, which is Italian for true to life. So all of the characters and situations are recognizable from real life situations at the time, so the audience could relate to them. So here we're going through our stock characters. We have the Punzanello, which is a hunchback and chases women. These characters are not politically correct in any form or fashion, but this is the comedy of the time. La Ruffiana, which is the older woman, and she gossips around town, intrudes into the lives of others. The Zani, who is the poor servant from smaller towns and then moves to the city for a better job. Arlecchino, he is a servant, poor peasant, and he is illiterate, so he cannot read, but he pretends to read. So they are playing on his lack of being able to read to make fun of him. He's often an acrobat or a clown and does slapstick type humor. So kind of what we would consider lower humor, like fart jokes, are what he is known for. And he always had this kind of patchwork clothing with different pieces of fabric sewn together. And we have the Brigella, who is always depicted as fat and slow and always made fun of. He's simple-minded and given orders, but he disobeys them. Then the Colombina, who is the maidservant to the lover character. She is sometimes depicted as the lover of Arlecchino, and she is intelligent. This is a common trope in many plays of the time, even across other countries, that the female maidservant is often the most intelligent person in the play. The dottore, the doctor, so he is of the richer class. He's an aristocrat. He is snobbish and rich, loves his food and wine. The Capitano, he was the boastful but cowardly Spaniard. So this was a common stereotype in Italy of the time, that they looked down on Spaniards, people from Spain, and said that they were cowards running away from battles. We have Pantalone, who is a rich and miserly merchant, meaning that he is a penny pincher. He's the father of one of the lover characters and employs Arlecchino but treats him cruelly. All right, so that those characters were used over and over again, so people kind of knew the basic plot and what to expect. So that was happening in Italy, and now we're moving to across the continent to England to talk about theater there. So This is the age of Shakespeare in England. So this is called the Elizabethan age under Queen Elizabeth I. She helped to develop England's creativity at the time because she had a love of language, poetry, and theater. So what happened in theater under Elizabeth? We went from amateur to professional. So actors were now considered professional careers, so they had a little bit more respect in society. There were companies of professional actors who gave playwrights a more stable and experienced group of performers. So you were able to have actors who actually perfected that skill. The playwrights were able to write more complex characters because now they had actors who could portray that more complex character. And we also have in England for the first time the building of permanent theater. So they're spaces that were now designed to present plays with permanent stages, backstage areas, and seating. So it wasn't just moved around like we had in Italy. Theater hating. However, the church thought that all theater that was not religious was evil. So no theaters were allowed within the London city limits because otherwise the church would shut them down. Theater construction, they were often circular or octagonal, 8 sides, because that was good for acoustics and you could fit more audience members. They're often 3 stories tall with an open or thatched roof, meaning it's kind of made with hay, and then an open platform with very little scenery. So it's similar to a proscenium stage like we have at Tate's Creek. So in English plays, we have a series of brief scenes that frequently change location from place to place. One group of characters left the stage and then another group entered, so then they knew that the scene was changing and they were in a different location. They used something called spoken decor, which was when a character signals a scene change by announcing it. So a character could pop up like, and now, nighttime. That way they didn't have to change out scenery, they didn't have lighting to be able to change the mood that we have today. A freer use of the stage space, again, no props, no scenery, so they were able to use the entire space. And almost all of the plays at this time are written in iambic pentameter, which means the words have 2 syllables to each beat, and when spoken, the stress is placed on the second beat. So if you've talked about Shakespeare at all in your English classes, you are familiar with iambic pentameter. The spectators, so the wealthier spectators sat in the benches, and then the poorer people stood or watched from the courtyard. They were called groundlings. All but the wealthy were uneducated and illiterate, so experiencing plays performed was the only way that they received literature, right? Because they couldn't read the printed out play, so they were able to still get the stories by the performance. The audience was often participatory in plays and expected to cheer or jeer. Again, we still have actors being only men and boys. They used young boys whose voices is not dropped yet to play the women's roles, and it was still considered indecent for a woman to appear on the stage. All right, so now let's compare the Commedia dell'arte from Italy and the Elizabethan theater from England. So we have the stock characters in Italy. We have masks to identify characters and movable stages, whereas in Elizabethan, we have scripted in iambic pentameter. In Commedia dell'arte, no exposition. Everybody already knew the characters. And the plot details are given through dialogue. Then in Elizabeth, oh my gosh, why are these out of order? Okay, there we go. Okay. Adult male actors, the only difference there is that in Elizabethan, they used younger boys to portray women. They were considered professional, but they both used spoken decor to identify scene changes. All right, the Elizabethan age. Again, we have William Shakespeare. So he is regarded as the greatest writer in English literature. He lived from 1536 to 1616. He was born in Stratford-upon-Avon, England. In total, he wrote 37 plays, including tragedies, comedies, and histories, 154 sonnets. That's a lot. He started his career as an actor before he began writing plays himself. He was a celebrity of the time. He was first an actor for Lord Chamberlain's Men, a London theater company, and then he became the principal playwright for the company. In 1599, he built the Globe Theater, where most of Shakespeare's plays were performed there. So you've all read this in your English classes, Romeo and Juliet. It's often considered his most famous play. It is considered a tragedy, although it is often interpreted in modern times to be a romance. You'll see all kinds of people being like, I'll be your Romeo and you can be my Juliet. No, they both died. So it's not. It's a tragedy. Dozens of modern films are based on the original narrative. You'll see members of dueling families fall in love, meet tragic ends. That is all based on the original plot of Romeo and Juliet. All right, dance. Dance is not a lot of fun in the Renaissance, y'all. Two noteworthy types of dances during this period: ballet and court dances. The ballet developed during the Italian Intermezzi, the late 1400s, performed during the interludes between acts of plays or operas. So that is how ballet started, in between opera acts to give the singers time to rest their voices. In both Italy and France, court dances were dances performed at social gatherings. The knowledge of an ability to dance gracefully was one of the most highly sought after traits of the court. The more proficient the dancer, the more impressive to the king and queen. So the court dances, the Renaissance court spectacles were often ornate, lots of decorations, lots of flashy stuff. And they emphasized geometrical patterns. So you're going to see moving in squares, moving in circles a lot. They used steps that were taken from the popular ballroom dances of the day, including the Pavani, Galliard, Volta, and others. We'll watch a clip of those in a second. Women and men did these dances together in the ballroom, but on stage, if it was a performance, women couldn't be on stage. The women's part were danced by men. The clothing was bulky and tight in the torso, which restricted movement in the upper body, so most of the movement is in the feet. Dancing became stylish at all Renaissance courts in Europe, including those of Queen Elizabeth I and Henry VIII. Okay, so court dances begin with a kiss with a bow, which shows respect to the king and queen, an introduction to the dance, and to your dance partner. Again, we have the emphasis on foot movement because the body was quite restricted on the clothing. Men showed off their footwork to attract the ladies. And there was a lack of physical contact. The men and women did not touch each other when they danced. Touching hands was considered the highest form of intimacy, so they just didn't do it. All right, so let's see what these dances look like.
When school isn't a place you have to be, why not go to school where remote learning can be as remote as you want?
Dance of the 16th century unfolds a richness and vision that is unique to the history of dance. The power and subtleties of each dance sequence expresses a lifestyle of majesty, grandeur, and the regal enjoyment of earthly pleasures.
If you're interested in this video, you can buy a link.
Throughout much of Renaissance Europe, dancing was considered a basic social skill for all members of the nobility and upper classes. At balls, dancing enabled the participants to display their good breeding, quick wit, and elegance. From a very young age, daily dance practice was a necessary part of any courtier's life. It cultivated the grace and nimbleness needed to charm the opposite sex. To do a proper bow, left foot forward, left foot back, bend both of your knees, and straightening, putting both feet together. Continenza. Always starting with your left foot, left to the side, bend your knees slightly, rise, and right to the side, bend your knees slightly, rise.
It's a fun dance move. Let's see it again from
The
the
left
back.
to the side, the right joins it, they plie a bit and rise. And the other way, right to the side, they plie a little bit and rise. Galliard is known for dance that offers opportunity for virtuosic jumps, particularly for the male dancer. Here we have the Arbo Galliard and the Carozo Galliard. And she responds with her seguite and two trabechetti and a seguito finto. The Saltarello, the height of their playful passion.
They're touching hands.
Spezzato and spezzato, step, step, destice. Spezzato and spezzato, step, step, destice. Step, step, spezzato, trap, destice. Step, step, spezzato, trap, destice. Spezzato and spezzato and...
Enough of that. All right, so that is what Renaissance dancing looked like. Notice they were moving in those geometric patterns, so we still see some of that emphasis on geometric shapes, just like we saw in architecture and painting. Renaissance. There we have it.